by this group of men to come back.
USA on one. USA!
Third gold in a row. Rio, Tokyo, and now Paris.
Coming to you from the Olympic City, Colorado Springs, Colorado, this is the USA Volleyball Show. And here's your host, Stephen Munson.
Hello and welcome to the USA Volleyball Show, the official podcast of USA Volleyball. I'm your host, Stephen Munson, and we're midway through May now, and championship season has officially begun at USA Volleyball. Just got back from the girls 18s Junior National Championship. Congratulations to all the clubs who made it to nationals there in Reno. What an incredible experience that was. I had a lot of fun. We had Haley Washington from the U.S. women's national team there, two-time Olympic medalist. They're making an appearance and talking to the athletes, talking to families, and did some fun content with her as well. And just good to catch up with her, too. I hadn't seen her in a little while, so that was fun. And but yeah, aside from that, shout out to all the division winners and newly crowned national champions. Thank you to all the USA Volleyball staff who are out there, our contractors, our sponsors, the officials, the convention center staff and vendors, of course, the city of Reno, too, for hosting and making that event just truly special. Also, just since we're fresh off Mother's Day and looking ahead to Father's Day next month, to all the parents, I know that was an emotional tournament for you all as well, and made it, a little bit extra special, just to see the closing chapter, the end of your kids' club career, and kind of for yourselves, just kind of reflecting on that whole journey and into that moment. And I know the tears and the emotions were flowing. So shout out to you all, and thank you for everything that you do for your kids' journeys and for the sport of volleyball too. And just know that we're thinking of you at USA Volleyball. Just such a special tournament, the girls 18s Junior Nationals, and it was fun to be a part of that. But next up in that championship lineup for us, the USA Volleyball Open Adult National Championship in Orlando on May 22nd through the 27th. Safe travels to everyone who's coming out for that. And right before that, we have our USA Volleyball Hall of Fame banquet and ceremony. And speaking of that, today's episode is all about that, and featuring one of, and actually our final guest that we'll have in kind of our Hall of Fame series, but an inductee, a member of the USA Volleyball Hall of Fame class of 2026. And going right into that, in today's episode, we chat with two-time Olympian and Olympic gold medalist Riley Salmon. We talk about the emotions and his reaction to getting that phone call from John Spirall to let him know that he would be inducted into the USA Volleyball Hall of Fame. And we learned a little bit about his volleyball background and his unique journey to the national team, and of course that gold medal in Beijing in 2008, and just other memorable moments from his career, and so much more. So let's jump right into that conversation. Here is Riley Salmon. Riley, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I'm really excited to dig into your career and some of the most memorable moments that you've had. But just right at the top here, just thank you so much, and we're excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've done anything with USA Volleyball, and the Hall of Fame honor literally came out of left field. It was something I've never expected. So enjoying the brief 15 more minutes of fame, and then, I'll move on with my life again. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. And anytime I can get back to USA Volleyball, they gave me so much. It's an honor to do anything with them any single time that I can. And always willing to jump on a call and talk volley.
Well, speaking of the Hall of Fame, let's get right into that. Your reaction, and we had, we were filming John Spirall as he called all the inductees of the class of 2026. And your reaction was one that stood out to me. It was so genuine, so fun. I think you said you don't get surprised often anymore.
Right.
And maybe an expletive was dropped there too, but it was just such a genuine reaction, and would love to jump into that. Just what were the emotions going through you in the moment, and then the days after too, as you kind of reflected on that?
I've known John for a long time, and especially in his new role, he's real busy. So usually we're just communicating via text, right? And first of all, when I saw his call come up, it was intriguing, first of all, because his secretary had reached out to me like a week before, and I was sure, I'll obviously talk to him whenever I can. And I was working out, and just he dropped that on me, and like I said, I don't get surprised much, and I know when I started playing volleyball, this was never ever an idea that I thought that I would be able to get to the Hall of Fame. Honestly, didn't even know there was a Hall of Fame for men's volleyball, right? And when he said it, it was a genuine reaction, as you guys saw. My best friends, Tom Hoff, Clay Stanley, and Loy, have all been inducted. So they took me, or Tom and Lloyd took me and Clay under their wings. And so just to get to walk the same path that they've walked is really special to me. I was a player that I played for the guys next to me. I didn't get many individual accolades, but my accolades were seeing the joy in their eyes. So I'm really stoked to do this for my family. My kids get to be part of this, which they really didn't get to see me play much. So yeah, it was a genuine reaction, but I'm really thrilled. And no words can really describe how I'm feeling. I'm excited to see what I'll say whenever we get to the actual induction and how that all will play out.
You mentioned some of your former teammates there, Tom and Clay and Loy. What did you get any text messages or calls from friends and family, former teammates? What were some of the kind of reactions that you got from your friends and family?
Yeah, those three particular were the ones that reached out to me, and they were really excited for me. They know how I played the game and know that I was a team guy, and for me to kind of get a little recognition I think was special for them to see. My family was obviously surprised, and we were really excited. My kids are just excited to get to take a trip to Florida. So we're my wife has been probably the biggest star in all of these years that she doesn't get seen much, but anybody that knows me or part of our volleyball unit knows that she kept me on the path. And essentially whenever I first started, no one really supported the journey except for her. So we're excited to get up there and have a little bit of fun with this. It's not often or ever that I'll get to celebrate something like this again. So I think we're going to enjoy it. And like I said, to be associated with those other three guys that's really special to me.
You mentioned just the support from your wife, and I'm sure just the emotions were flowing for her and you as you kind of talked about the journey and reflected on that after getting that phone call from John Spiral. But I guess just would love to hear you dive in a little bit more, just like what this truly means for you and kind of the legacy that you left behind.
It validates that hard work can kind of pretty much it outworks anything, and it can. I think I'm the example of showing up early and leaving late. I wasn't the strongest player. I wasn't the biggest player. I didn't jump the highest. But when I got to the gym in 2001, I realized that I had the ability to compete and make my teammates better. And that was through a coach that had actually gave me that insight. Because of course you want to be the guy, right? You want to be set all the time. You want to be leading and scoring, and you want to do those things, but that wasn't my role. So, to get to understand my role and for my wife to really be supportive and get to watch this whole thing and be a part of it. We traveled for 17 years playing abroad, and I think it's a little validation for her as well. I mean, she told me I could do it from the very beginning. And, as we've gone through a bunch of ups and downs in my career and winning the gold medal in 2008, the three Olympic, quadrennials that I went through, and it was a grind. It was really, really difficult. Sometimes some days were really, really hard towards the end. So I know she's super excited to get out there and kind of and be part of this honor, because it really is. It's both of our honors together. It's not just me. I mean, she deserves it more than me probably, because she put up with a lot of stuff that nobody's seen behind the scenes. And we're both excited. We've been together for 31 years, so this is just one of the coolest things that we get to do as a unit. And being parents of a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, you don't get to do much things for yourself, for the last 15 years. So this will be pretty cool for both of us to get to Florida and enjoy this celebration.
I think that's just an excellent and important reminder for the fans listening, the fans of you, the fans of USA Volleyball, the fans of our current national team athletes, as well as a lot of times you see the athletes on TV. Lucky few get to see the athletes in person too, but you don't see the support systems behind those athletes. And like you said, all the behind the scenes that happens off the court with your families, with your friends. And love hearing you talk about your support system and and the importance that they played in your role or in your career and getting you to this moment. So yeah, thank you for that.
No problem. And I would venture to say anybody that has got to this level has an incredible support system, because it's much more difficult than it appears. And I don't want to make it sound like it's the hardest thing to do in the world because I'm hitting a volleyball for money. It's not that difficult. But just like anything in life, there are challenges, and it's a lot easier to face challenges with a group of people than it is to go on it by yourself. And I've been really lucky to have the support system I've had over the years, and I'm really looking forward to celebrating it with them. They'll all be there in attendance, so it's going to be a pretty special night for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, what are you looking forward to most at the ceremony? There's the whole class of 2026 will be there, or at least most of them, and I'm sure it'll be fun to kind of reconnect with some of that class and maybe even meet some that you haven't met before. But yeah, what are you looking forward to most in Orlando?
Yeah, doing it with my family. I think, again, my kids didn't get to see me. They saw me play, but they were little. They don't remember.
Right.
They don't remember the Olympic journey, and so just they're asking me lots of questions now. Did I do this? Did I do that? So I think for them to see that it's real and it's not just a made up, story on Instagram or something like that, I think that's going to be really special for me. And they also see how much their mom has done. We're all in this together, is what we say a lot, and learn that phrase from Hugh. But it's truly meaningful for me and my family. And my mom and her fiance will be there, and some really good friends of mine that have been with me through the journey. I'm looking forward to see Phil. I've known Phil for 25 years. I knew him before he even made his first main draw. And in fact, my agent at the time, I'd been playing for a year and a half in Europe, and he asked me to ask my agent if he could get a job indoor over in Europe. And my agent at the time said, I don't think he's going to be good enough. And so it'll be an interesting story to see if he can remember that. And but yeah, I know all of the inductees, and my wife and I have met them all. We've hung out a lot, so it'll be fun to see them and experience all this together. It's really not much fun if you do it by yourself, right? But when you have a good group of people that have been through the same exact thing that you've been through and realize how special it is and how much work went into this, it's going to be a great night. And I'm just looking forward to seeing the look on on everyone else's faces. Like I said, I really enjoy doing that. Those are my memories, is when I'm watching other people enjoy their 15 minutes of fame.
Well, the indoor career might not have worked out for Phil, but
I think the rest of it did.
Yeah, I think so. I think he did just fine.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations again. It's gonna be amazing to get to celebrate with you and your family, and I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, like we said before we started recording here, I'll see you on the red carpet, and we'll get to catch up a little bit there too in person.
Great. Looking forward to that as well.
All right. Is your family planning anything else in Orlando? Maybe a trip to Disney or Universal or anything like that?
Not. My wife works a lot, so we're getting there. I think we're going to spend one extra day there. I'm not sure what we're going to do. I'm leaving it up to her. She's going to tell me what to do and where to be.
Love that.
Right now we're just focused on getting everybody there, making sure we're dressed appropriately, and making sure the kids show up and do everything they're supposed to do. And but we're going to stay an extra day, and I'm sure we'll go around to see some sights. And I don't know if Disney's in the works or not, but I'm sure we'll find something to do.
Of course, yeah. There's plenty to do in Orlando too. So even just walking around and exploring the sites nearby is great too. Hoping for great weather too. Yeah, let's jump into your career a little bit. Just want to kind of take a look back, and you've probably, as after getting the call from John, have kind of been reflecting on some of your memorable moments. But yeah, what are some of kind of the biggest takeaways from your career that maybe some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
The biggest lesson I learned, and it goes into me coaching currently as well, is don't really judge a book by its cover. I came into the USA gym, and on the depth chart I was the 9th outside hitter. On a 20-man, I think we called it the World League roster, the World League roster back then. I was the 20th man on that list, and wasn't expected to make any travel teams or anything like that. And so really excited to.
Who is this?
What's up, William?
Wow.
Long time no see.
Reed, you're on mute, actually.
Oh. All right.
Four-time Olympian Reed Pretty joining the call. What a surprise.
Yes, I wanted to be one of the first to congratulate my buddy Riley, one of the best teammates ever, on a well-deserved Hall of Fame induction.
Thank you, sir. I'm stoked and fortunate enough to get to be in the same category with you, my man.
Oh man. Yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Riley. You one of my favorite teammates, and always got the team to play harder. And that's the more that I get into coaching, the more rare that skill is, buddy. And you had it in spades, and it was a pleasure to share the court with you, bud.
Thank you, Mr. Pretty. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was just saying the same thing. As we get into coaching, you start to realize how special our group was and how each individual player, certain characteristics that you don't find nowadays in a lot of players. And yeah, the glue guy is something I took pride in. And it definitely wasn't easy at times managing all those egos, but it was definitely worth it. And definitely when we held that gold medal up, and to watch your career, man, you've done freaking unbelievable. I can't believe you were playing as long as you did. And we were just talking about the unbelievable support systems that we had with our families and whatnot. And I know you had a great one as well. So I appreciate the call, my man. And I'm sure we'll see each other soon.
Thank you,
guys.
Reed.
All right.
Later, brother.
Before I go, I'm going to share my favorite Riley story, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, please do.
Please.
This just encapsulates the kind of teammate that he was. So I hated making errors. I hated it. And in fact, I had a coach my first year professionally that basically told me, like, you're on the court to keep the ball in play. You're not allowed to take risk. He was a terrible coach, by the way. So by the time that we were starting to get into our own, this was early 2000s. I remember Riley coming to me and noticing that I had a point scoring serve, but noticing that I was like holding back because I hated making mistakes. And he just said to me, Reed, you got it. We need you to hit your serve. We need you to do it. And he said, I'm opposite you in the rotation. I'm going to keep my serve in to balance out the errors, but we have to have you going for it. And that was sort of the last straw that made me start believing that I could have a point scoring serve and go for it. And it came from somebody else, not my own self-belief. It came from a belief from a teammate. And Riley's done that to me and so many countless other teammates. So I'm proud of you, buddy. And I'm certain that this is going to be a great conversation that I'll tune into later.
Thank you, Reed. Tell Lindsay I said hi, man. I remember that.
All right.
I remember that day vividly, by the way.
Awesome.
All right, brother. Have a good day, man.
Guys.
Thank you,
care.
Reed. Bye.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, speaking of support systems, yeah, we talked about the ones off the court, behind the scenes, but yeah, your teammates too. Incredible support systems through the journey.
Yeah, you come to rely on them as much as you do as your family, and you I can remember exactly what Reed's talking about. It was actually in 2008, early on in World League. He had or maybe 2007, one of the two, and he was real tentative towards the end of sets, and I asked him why, and he said he didn't want to let the team down. That was simply, and valid point. And he was real polite the way he said it. I said it much more aggressively than that. But I told him to hit his serve. He has one of the best serves in the game of volleyball, and we don't care what happens. If you miss 20 in a row, we know at some point you're going to hit a serve that's going to win us a set. And sure enough, for the rest of his career, he was no longer, I don't want to use the word afraid, he was no longer cautious at the end of sets. He would go back and rip it. And, that was a really great conversation. It became instrumental in our success in 2008. And he was absolutely, him and Clay were our two best servers. And yeah, it was, that's what teammates do for each other, though. We have each other's back all the time, no matter what.
While we're still talking about Reed, and I know you kind of touched on it, just to see how cool it was to see him play for so long at such a high level there with the national team, and then of course getting that bronze medal in 2016 too, which he played a pivotal role in that team getting that medal. So yeah, what was that like for you and for watching that moment?
Yeah, I follow Reed closely, especially when he was playing. And I've worked with him on the AVP. I've worked with, we've had several conversations throughout his career on situations that come up where he thinks I can help him. So yeah, watching him, 2016 was a pretty big struggle for him. I don't think he'll mind me saying that. He was a third outside hitter, and that was not the role he was comfortable in, and he showed the very last match of that tournament why he might have had a good argument for that. And yeah, he's just an unbelievable player. unbelievable belief in his God and his faith. And he really showed me what it's like to be a Christian man. And I showed him what it's to be kind of fearless on the volleyball court. So we really complemented each other. We always would talk to each other if we had issues, especially obviously regarding volleyball. And one of Hugh's favorite phrases was being open, honest, and direct. And so we did that a lot. We had a lot of tough conversations through the years. But, Reed's a great human being. He's got to be successful at whatever he does. He has the work ethic that it takes to be successful. And I'm sure, as you know, he has a couple things going. And it was really great to see him in that 2016 match come in and completely change the dynamic of that match. So
For sure.
that's, there's no words that can express, that comes from experience and belief in yourself. And he showed what it's all about right there. That's why we practice so hard. That's why we put the hours in.
Yeah. Well, what a fun surprise to have him jump on the call here. And it was fun to hear you two kind of go back and forth and share some stories and just the appreciation that you have for each other.
Yeah, I believe that's what it's about. I believe at this level, you realize how hard it is to do what we did. And when you're in the moment, I'm not so sure I realized how hard it was to do what I was doing. I was just doing it. But like he mentioned, as you're coaching and you start to try to mold other young athletes into what you feel could be a productive volleyball player, you start to see certain characteristics that are lacking and that we took for granted because we had them and the players around us had them. And it's just I think it's a natural thing from a coaching standpoint to wonder why they don't have that. And, I've had some great mentors in my life, Marv Dunby and Doug Beal and Hugh, and they just, they remind me that being a gold medal athlete is 1 in 5 million. It's a special attribute that it's not just physical. It's a lot of the mental stuff that it takes to be successful. So yeah, it's always fun to talk about that stuff.
Well, apologies. I think we interrupted you in your last our last question for you, but yeah, just kind of, I guess, picking up where we left off, just the biggest takeaways that you had from your career.
Yeah, I think, not to judge a book by its cover, like I was saying, I came in as the 8th or 9th outside hitter and honestly was not expected to make the first trip, which was in like 3 or 4 weeks. And after the first 2 or 3 days, I realized that I could play with these guys and all it was going to take was to work harder and to stay longer and to outgrind everybody. And that's what I did. And as a coach and as a player, the biggest takeaway that I've taken away is that nothing will ever beat hard work. Even if you're maybe not going to be successful as a lot of the other players, you continue to work hard and good things will come in your life and your career. Nothing ever trumps hard work. And I think that's one of the things that I'm always the proudest of is how hard that I was able to grind, and not just me, but I would push my teammates to show up early and to get the extra reps that we needed where we were struggling or some of our deficiencies. And we worked on those things and, we held each other to the highest level of accountability. And I think nowadays that's kind of pushed aside. I don't see a lot of players holding each other to a high level of accountability when I watch and whenever I work with a lot of the young players now, younger players.
Well, one of our favorite questions that we like to ask, all of our guests, and it's always different. Everyone has their own paths, but how are you introduced to the game of volleyball?
Oh man, it was lucky. My sister's 2 years younger than me. And I was a junior in high school. So I guess she would have been in 9th grade at that point. And I'd watched her, 7th, 8th grade play 7th, 8th grade volleyball, which is obviously not always real fun to watch. But as a brother, you're there watching. And my 11th grade year, I was 11th grade summer. So I'd finished my 10th grade year. And then going into 11th, I promised myself I was going to make the JV basketball team. In order to do that, I came from this pretty big school in Texas that had a lot of really good basketball players. And I figured I had to work every single day in the off season and summer. So I was going and doing that at open gyms every single day and lifting weights and doing all the things that I was trying to do to become a better basketball player. And I would go up to me and my best friend played volleyball, and I always gave him a hard time because I would drop him off at the girls' gym. He would go in and play volleyball and I would play basketball. We'd meet up 2.5 hours later. And I dropped him off, said, have fun playing the girls' sport, and laughed, and then drove over and got into the basketball gym, and it was being resurfaced. And I was like, oh crap, I've got to wait 3 hours now and watch volleyball. So went back over there and, they said, hey, we need one. I'm like, no, I'm not playing. I don't want to play. I'm really geared towards basketball. I'm going to shoot baskets over here while you guys play. Like, no, we just need you to for 5 minutes till this other person shows up. I said, okay. So they put me in right at left front, and very first ball was shanked over towards my direction. The setter doesn't want to set me. I know this, but they, has no other option. So he throws it up on the net, and I took 2 steps and I swung at it, and I hit the ball, and it hit the floor, and kind of everybody stopped, and they were like, "You've never done this before?" And I was like, "No, but I want to now." I remember instantly I was hooked. Instantly, I didn't know any technique, any training. And like from that day on, I played for 5 years consecutively, and I didn't miss one day after that. It was really, really, it was super addicting. But more than anything, I just loved the way it felt. It felt natural. And so my junior year was my first year to play volleyball, which is obviously a very, very late start. But I made up for it because I was obsessed with it, and I played every opportunity that I could. I had a really cool high school coach. I kind of hung out with the bad crowd, and I was staying out late doing things you shouldn't do. And as I became more engulfed in the volleyball scene, he would open up the gym at 11 p.m. till 2 a.m. And there was about 6 of us that would go in and play triples, And so that kept me out of a lot of trouble. And obviously it got me a lot better at volleyball as well, just playing that amount of time. And again, back to that support system, you don't think about those things until years are removed. And, how did I get good ball control? Well, I was playing every single day, and, just played different varieties of the game, 2s, 3s, 4s, 6s. But yeah, that's how I was introduced to it. And man, after that day, I never missed a day for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I feel like the support system is going to be a continuing theme in this call. It already is early on, but yeah, and I think a lot of conversations that we've had on the podcast, we talk about kind of the people that impacted your careers, and that coach opening up the gym early on or late, not only kept, like you said, kept you out of trouble, but I think that I would guess that kind of attributed and fueled the passion for you to show up early and leave late and have that work ethic. That's just such a cool moment that you shared there, and I think everybody remembers that first moment where
you get hooked in the sport.
It's a special feeling for volleyball players, because most of us, as men anyway, didn't really start playing volleyball, right? It was a second or a third sport.
Sure.
And everybody that I've talked to that has success has exactly that kind of story. Something around there that sparked their interest, and they were like, holy cow, this is such a cool game. I can't believe I waited this long to get involved in it,
I didn't play really any like truly organized volleyball until college. I played collegiate club at Texas State in San Marcos, Texas, and which I'm going to get into you with the Texas connection too. I'm from Dallas originally.
Oh, right on, man.
But I was playing just like a little, and I've shared this story a million times. Listeners are probably tired of hearing this, but I was playing just a little fundraiser tournament at I think it was my apartment complex at the time, and the men's team was there recruiting, asking guys to come out and to tryouts, and I was like, sure, yeah, sounds fun, like a little club sport, whatever, no big deal. And I walk in the gym, and I just remember I just lit up. My eyes just got wide. I had never seen volleyball played like that before.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to be a part of this. I hadn't even like hit a ball yet. I just like walked in and saw it, and I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm here for good now. But
it's amazing that it hooks us like that, right? So pretty shortly after that first experience, I want to say a month or 2 months later, that same coach got tickets to the USA team versus Japan at Hoffein's Pavilion in Houston.
Amazing.
And and so I walked in, and we got there as they were peppering, and I made my way all the way down to the floor and just stood there and watched them pepper for the 30 minutes. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to pepper. It wasn't even the hitting that got me. It was this unbelievable ball control that these guys, and how hard they were warming up. Right. And so, it's like, just like you said, it's just weird. It catches our attention, and then we're hooked for life.
Exactly. Yeah. Diving into the Texas connection here. You're from outside of Houston. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a place. It's called
League
League
City?
City, Texas.
League City,
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Yeah, I mean, it's a smaller city, about 30 miles south of Houston. I actually moved there when I was in sixth grade. I'm actually from a place called Dayton, Texas, but nobody
Okay.
knows where that is. It's just like it sounds. It's as small as it sounds. But when we moved to League City, which was a little bit more, we moved there for my parents' work, and it was a little bigger, small suburb of Houston. And yeah, that's where I started playing high school volleyball, 11th grade. Up until then, I'd played baseball, basketball, and then I made the varsity tennis team as a freshman. So I played a lot of different sports that, like a lot of people that turn to volleyball, right? That's one of the later sports that we find. And when I found it, it's growing up in that area of the United States. It's not a really big volleyball part for boys or men, right? So what I ended up doing is I would just go to any open gym that I could find, and ended up eventually leading me to this older group of players that would play USAV around the country. They would travel to all these tournaments around the country. And that was kind of my first, my first experience traveling and playing volleyball as a senior in high school. With club, I did that. And then I got to play with these guys that were all from Texas. And again, the support system, they taught me how to compete. It was really interesting because we're with a bunch of 30-year-old men that are playing volleyball in Texas, and they're playing at a really, really high level. We would go to open nationals, and these guys would take fifth or third, and nobody knew who they were. Nobody ever knew who they were. So the one thing they taught me was how to compete. I learned that from those guys. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises when I made it to the national team, is I wasn't shocked at the competitiveness, because I'd already been doing that for a long time. But yeah, growing up in Houston was interesting. It was fun. And when I had the opportunity to leave after my senior year, you got to remember, this is 1994, no cell phones, no nothing. I'd never even been outside of the state before. So going to California at that point was like a foreign country to me.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point there is the open gyms part of it, is especially on the boys side. And, it can even trickle over to the girls side too. Depending on where you are in the country, there might not be a lot of volleyball happening, but finding an open gym where, you're playing with and against adults, you're going to get better a lot, like really quick. And you're seeing volleyball played in a different way, and a different level than you've seen before when you're playing against kids your own age. But yeah, you kind of level up quick there at those open gyms.
Yeah, and I was forced to. I mean, I started late, and I didn't know you could play in college when I started initially. By my senior year, we had a couple of guys, a guy by the name of Russell Brock, who had went over to play at USC. And there was a couple other guys, Matt Millay and a guy named Tommy. I can't remember Tommy. Tommy went and played at Park. But so I was hearing these things, and they would come back and play us at our club team because they were from that club, and they were really good,
Cool.
and they were different. They talked like they had been in California. They talked about how cool the experience was. But the most important thing for me is that they were really good at volleyball. And they all said, to get better at volleyball, you're going to have to leave the state of Texas. You're going to have to probably go to California. And so that's what I did. I took their advice and went out to Pierce Junior College.
And have you been in California ever since? Is that where you
on it? Yeah, on and off. Yeah, we so when I first joined the national team, it was in Colorado Springs. So the national team was I joined in 2001, and then in 2005 the city of Anaheim bought the team. So from 2001 to 2005 we had a house in Colorado, and we trained there. And obviously I would go to Europe in the pro season months, and then I'd come back and play. But then moving back from when we moved out to Anaheim, yes, we've stayed in California pretty much the entire time, with a couple of brief stints back in Houston due to some, my wife's mom passed and she had to take care of her in hospice. But yeah, we've been out here predominantly since then. And I don't know what's going to happen, because I'm in the midst of doing a little bit of hunting for a new job on the women's side of volleyball thing. So who knows what's going to happen with that? But I really love it out in California. It's been a place that I said that I would never leave, but never say never, I guess.
That's kind of how I feel about Colorado now. I've been here going on 12 years now.
Yeah.
I'm in the Denver area. I was in Colorado Springs for 6 years before the pandemic, but now work remotely up in Denver. But I love it here. My wife is from here. Her family's here, and we have a 3-year-old son, or almost 3-year-old son as well. So
Right on.
Yeah, building a family here, it's great, and I do miss parts of Texas, particularly the food. I think a lot of when I go home, my parents and brother still live there, so I go home and I hit all the good spots that I miss. But yeah, anything from Texas that you miss?
You hit it. The Tex-Mex I really miss. But other
Tex-Mex,
than
yeah.
that, I don't miss anything, to be quite honest with you. The weather is so atrocious. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
hot. I obviously miss my friends, but from there,
of course,
but
yeah.
it's you wake up out here and you realize, and a lot, it's like Colorado too. Colorado is a special place to live. It's beautiful, and especially if you're into snow and mountains. Out here, I'm into the ocean and to 72 and sunny. So that's for my old aging body. It's a really nice place to be. I will say this, Stephen. I do miss the Southern hospitality. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
something that you forget about a lot, especially when you move to other places. And out in California, there is no such thing as manners. They don't have them, and it's really difficult to raise two kids as I was raised in Texas. But we do our best, and we try to still give them a little bit of the Texas yes ma'am and yes sir stuff. And but I do miss the Southern hospitality and the Tex-Mex. I miss that for sure.
Yeah, it's something that you don't get anywhere else really, and you got to be immersed into it too for it to kind of soak into you. But
Yes, sir.
right,
Exactly.
yeah, the food for sure, the Tex-Mex, the barbecue. Found some good barbecue spots out here in Colorado, but yeah, it's nothing like.
Feel like back home.
Right.
Well, yeah, you kind of touched on it there a little bit. You played 2 years at Pierce College in LA, and then by 2001, you were a member of the men's national team. What was that journey like for you, going from playing at Pierce for a couple of years and then finding your way onto the national team?
Yeah, it was really, non-traditional would be the word I would use for sure. After my second year at Pierce, I had several opportunities to go to some major universities, Pepperdine, USC, Long Beach, Hawaii, just to name a few. All the top schools were looking at me. I just was not a good student. Honestly, I was not a good student. I didn't like school. And I think I was a little bit afraid of the academic side of when I look back on it now. It was a lot of fear of not being able to pull the academic load. That's probably the only thing I wish that I would have done differently in my career, was to finish that athletic and academic journey. I think that would have been something really, really cool. However, it seemed to have worked out okay. But after my second year at Pierce, I really wanted to play on the AVP. That was what I wanted. I thought that was what I was going to do. And so I went back to Houston, and we had a group of about 6 guys that were really, really could play on the AVP. We're about that level. So we would always train together, and we would train every day from 3 to 4:30 in the heat. And then I would work at a volleyball complex from 4:30 to midnight. And then I'd wake up and I'd work at General Electric. I was a supervisor of a storage warehouse from 7:30 to about 3. So I was working 2 jobs, training, and basically saving as much money as I could to travel and play the Wilson qualifying tour, is what it was called back then. And you played that tour, and the top 3 teams were exempt into the AVP the following season. So that was the goal. That was what I was going to do. And I did that for a year, and we finished, I want to say 4th. We missed it by 1 spot. So the next year, more of the same. And we ended up making it. The very last, the last tournament we played was a qualifier in Santa Barbara, and me and my partner at the time, a guy named Jake Elliott, we finished in the top 3. So we were exempt from the AVP the following year. However, that was in 98, I think if I remember correctly. However, I had just signed my first pro contract in Italy. And so I had to make a decision if I wanted to stay back and train with him for the AVP, or if I was going to go to Italy and try to pursue that route. And inevitably, I decided for Italy because it was just more lucrative. It was actual money that I was in my pocket, and I did not think I was going to make a career out of it. The plan was to play indoor and then come back in the summer and play AVP. That was the plan. And then what ended up happening, and I think I'll jump into that next question, is that a guy named, a really good friend of Doug Beal was a scout over in Europe, and he saw me playing. And he came up to me after one of my matches, and I thought this was a joke. He just came up, this small guy wearing a USA polo, and he said, "Hey, would you like to try out for the USA team? And I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. And he goes, okay, Doug's going to call you tomorrow night, And I was like, okay, sure. I didn't think anything of it. And sure enough, he did call, the next night. And that kind of started my journey with USA Volleyball. He said, hey, we have one spot open on the World League roster and we're looking to fill it. If you're interested, it's yours. And I'm just sitting across, the plan was to go back and play AVP. And so again, I had to make another decision. So me and my wife sat there, and it really wasn't a hard decision at that point. I had started becoming, I was getting to the next level as a volleyball player indoor. I was playing in A2 Italy, which at that time was like the third best league in the world. And it was my second season there, and I had really stood out as one of the top outside hitters in that league. And so I knew I could compete, and I knew I could play at the highest level. And when I got that call, it probably took us about 3 minutes to discuss. And before I knew it, I was flying all my stuff over to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado in 2001. And so that kind of started that journey. And the guy's name was Jim Coleman. Sorry, I was spacing.
Oh, yeah, Jim Coleman.
Jim Coleman. Yeah, Jim Coleman was instrumental in getting me to the USA gym. He said he was Doug Bill's right-hand man, and that he thought I had something special, and he couldn't believe nobody had heard of me. That was the crazy thing is, usually over in Europe, especially if you're American, all the USA guys know who you are and they know the pipeline. You played through college for 4 years. And so he was really impressed with the story that I presented, and Doug was as well. But, talking to Doug now, and when I first got to the gym, he did not think that I was going to make that first trip. But, a lot of things happen, and God works in mysterious ways. So many props to Jim Coleman, rest in peace. And, he was really, really a big deal. And I gave him a lot of credit early in my career and still to this day, just for seeing something in me that thought that I could at least contribute at that level.
Yeah, and a credit to him and Doug for, not, like you said, an unorthodox path that you had going from Pierce College, community college, and then going to compete internationally overseas. But credit to them to having their vision, not tunnel vision at just the top schools and the athletes coming out of those schools, and looking outside of that and finding a gym in you that they wouldn't have thought at the time, but playing a huge role in securing a gold medal for the U.S. men's national team.
Absolutely. And there was lots of things had to align too. It was really interesting because in 2000, the U.S. team was seeded 2 in the world, and they went to Sydney and had a really awful experience at the Olympics. And of those 12 guys that were there, I think 2 only came back from that team. So obviously that opens up a massive amount of space, right? And without that happening, I probably don't get that shot, and so many things have to fall in line. And, I say this quite a bit in several different parts of my life. God always does for me what I can't do for myself. And looking back on that was absolutely something that he saw was going to happen. And again, walking into that gym with Reed was one of the first guys I'd met. A guy named Brandon Talaferro, who's coaching with the women's national team now. And, we had competed against those guys and on the beach, and they, of course, had no idea who I was until I beat them. Sorry, have to throw that out there. Every time I see Brandon and Reed, I remind them of that. But yeah, we, it was just, it was an incredible journey just to start with that. And just to get the opportunity in 01 to show up at that gym. I remember telling my wife, like, I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm not going to hold back. And that was my role. That was my mindset every single day, was like, if I don't make it to tomorrow, that's fine. I'm going to give everything I have today. And, this was way before we had a lot of sports psychologists telling us that was the mindset we should have. It was just something that was instilled in me, was to go as hard as I could every single day.
I'd love to hear you talk about just those early years. You mentioned, going there in 2001 and that first quad, but was there, I guess, talk about the adversity you may have felt, coming in as we talked about a little bit, a relatively unknown player, especially among those other guys in the gym, and kind of making a name for yourself and proving to them and to yourself that you belong in that gym.
It was actually very intimidating the first week, just getting there. And I knew who all these other players were. I'd watched them in college. I'd followed their careers. They just, since I wasn't in that collegiate scene, they had no idea who I was. And the only advantage I had is I was playing professionally at 22 years old or 21. You know, I was playing against grown men in one of the top divisions. So seeing them and their ability didn't really intimidate me. What intimidated me was just the USA gym, right? And the magnitude of playing where Karch had played and playing where Steve, you know, things of that stuff, getting in your own head. However, you start, I'm a likable guy when I shouldn't say when I'm playing against you. I'm sure you don't like me, but anybody would like me to be on their team, you know, and I, like Reed alluded to, you know, I really do try to bring out the best in my teammates. And I want them to know that no matter what happens, I've got their back. And I think guys noticed that really quick, especially all of us were super young at that point. I mean, that entire group, with the exception of 3 or 4 players, were under 25 years old, you know, so we were very young, very inexperienced, but we were very hungry. And so those first 3 years of, you know, training with that group of guys was, you know, we all became best friends because we were all in the same grind together. And, you know, we, unfortunately, like I said, the USA team was seeded 2 in Sydney. By the end of that year, 2001, I think we dropped to like 16 or 15, you know, something that the USA men's volleyball team had never been that low. It might've been 12, but we were very, very low on the for USA men's volleyball. So we all decided that year, hey, you know, we're young. The next year we obviously bounced back and did some really good things. And by 2004, you know, we ended up losing in the bronze medal match and ended up 4th in the world, which I don't think if you had looked at that group in 2001, you would have said that was going to be a reality of the situation. But it goes to show to that core group, again, was the group that we had in 08. And a lot of those guys, Reed, Clay, Rich Lamborn, you know, Tom Hoff, we're all there in 04, and we were all, you know, putting in countless hours because those trainings from 01 to 04 were massively difficult. Doug would have us from 9 to 12 playing volleyball. We would live from 12 to 2, and a lot of times we would come back for a double day in the afternoon. And that was unheard of at the time. That was not normal training. You know, this was just probably, I wouldn't say load management, but it was starting to get to where the strength and conditioning people had seen that the Olympic lifts and the hardcore pounding wasn't so advantageous anymore to the you know, it wasn't conducive to volleyball. But Doug, that was his style, right? So you either bought into it or you didn't. And, you know, I think as athletes, it all made us stronger mentally those first 4 years, but it was really difficult. I mean, there were days where I not wanted to quit, but I didn't want to get up the next day because I was so tired and so sore. And I would venture to say most of our gym was like that for the first 2.5 years.
Yeah, talking about those first 3 years leading into 04 and tremendous growth going from, like, you know, 16th down close to the bottom there, all the way to making it to the medal match, coming up just a little bit short, finishing 4th. But what went right for you and the team, you know, leading into Beijing in 2008, and what changes did you make? Did you see in yourself and the team that really pushed you all to get that gold medal and you know, return the U.S. men's national team program to glory there?
I think it really started in 01. I think with just that hard work and the base of that solid base of guys that we had. And then something really interesting happened actually in 2004. I'm going to touch on this briefly, then I'll get to that question. In 2004, so I was a starter from 2001, the first trip. I was a 3rd outside hitter, or 4th outside hitter, sorry. Then I came in, I played really well. Doug started me for the rest of the time until right before the Athens games. And a guy named Kevin Barnett had been out for 3 years he had this microfracture surgery that went haywire, and he could barely play because his knee was so swollen, but he was gearing everything to finish his career in Athens. And so we all knew he was coming back. And when he came back the tournament before the Olympics. It was like 2 weeks before the Olympics. We were in Serbia, and he played out of his mind. You know, he was playing unbelievable. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, well, he's going to take either my spot or Reed's spot. That's where he's going to be playing. And after that tournament, Doug came up to me and he said, hey, we're going to start Kevin in Athens, and you have 24 hours to sulk. And then I want you to be on board the next day, and I want you to lead these guys every day in practice. And so I learned a massive lesson there, because I thought I was going to be starting my first Olympics. I thought I was this, that, and whatever. And then a guy came in and played better than me and I had to now accept this new role. And I could have been pissed and chose to be disgruntled, but that wasn't going to help our team. And I knew that. I knew that we were going to be at a disadvantage to the other top 3 teams in the world. They were just better than we were. But to have a chance, we needed Kevin on the floor. And so I, again, every day before practice the Olympics, I'd be the first one in for serve and pass, getting Kevin ready. And, I did that through that tournament, and I ended up playing the last 2 matches. I ended up starting those matches. But so that brings us now to 2008, the quad from 2004 to 2008. We have that same nucleus. Kevin had to retire due to his knee, but we were all really hungry at this point. We realized that we could play with the top teams in the world. We hadn't beat Russia yet. I don't think we beat them for 11 years, actually, until we beat them in the semifinals of 2008. But all of us young guys were now a little bit more mature, and we wanted to prove something. And I think playing with a chip on your shoulder like that can do one of 2 things. It can cause you to press too much, or it can motivate you to kind of play harder against the guys that you want to prove yourself to. And I think most of us did that for those 4 years. But the instrumental changes were all probably mental mindset changes that we made. A lot of the players on that team had really big egos, and a lot of them put them aside. Around 2007, around that time that Reed and I had that conversation, we had several other conversations with several other players discussing, hey, we will be good if you can just be you. And a lot of those players decided, hey, we can be great. And they put all their ego aside, and we really bought into the team concept. And I give Hugh a lot of credit for that, because he brought in a guy named Ken Ravizza, who was this amazing sports site guy that worked with the Diamondbacks and the Angels, and unfortunately passed away 3 years ago from cancer. But he came in, and it's a quirky dude, but he had some really, really great information for all of us. And so it really united us. And by the time we were headed to Beijing, we were prepared and we were ready. And then obviously we had that massively unfortunate event that occurred. But before that, we had all bonded, man. We were a tight group, and we were playing for the guy beside you. And I think that was the big difference between the 04 group and the 08 group, as we really were, we didn't care who was playing. We all wanted to be there for each other. And we knew if someone went down, the next man had to step up. And we brought it every single day in practice for, we all committed to each other that we were going to be the best.
Yeah. And just, we've talked about it on our podcast before, but just for our listeners, and reminder that, the unfortunate event was the attack on Hugh McCutcheon's family in 2008 at the Beijing Olympics. And, but yeah, just, an incredibly difficult journey for Hugh, of course, and the whole team too. And Hugh to be absent from the team for most of that trip too. But like you mentioned, just the camaraderie and the family bonding that happened before that, I would assume was that final piece that was missing maybe from 04 that really pushed you all to kind of stay together, push those egos aside, and get that gold medal for the program, and of course for Hugh, for each other, for yourselves, and yeah, just what a remarkable story that is, and love hearing you talk about your perspective and your side of that journey too.
Yeah, it was life changing, honestly. The not winning the gold medal was, but more than that, the effect of what had happened on Hugh's family. I knew Wiz really well. A lot of us did. We played with, we were there when she was training for the 04 Olympics. Obviously Hugh has been our guy, and he had been with us since 05, I believe. No, what am I saying? 03. He'd been there before the Athens games. So we'd all bought into each other just as a family, right? And when something happens like that, to where, a family member is murdered on, and even when I say it today, I don't realize the magnitude of what really happened. We're in our serve and pass, and we have a match the next day against Venezuela, and Hugh just sprints out, and of course me and Tom are the captains, and we're like, what happened? Where's he going? And nobody knew. And next thing we know is about 10 FBI agents come storming in the practice and pull us all up into the safe room. And then they obviously tell us what happened, that that Wiz's father was murdered and the assailant jumped off the fifth story and killed himself, right? And Wiz's mom was obviously seriously injured as well. And what happened next was something that only would happen with your family, right? As all of us got together and we said, what do we do for Hugh and Wiz? What do we do? We didn't, the volleyball was secondary, obviously. We didn't even care, nobody cared about the volleyball. Where's Hugh? What do they need? What can we do? And about an hour later, they said, okay, Riley, you and Tom are going to the hotel to meet with Hugh. It was later in the evening. This was about 11 a.m. And so in the evening, Tom and I went in a taxi over to the Hilton where he had been put up. And, we walk in and there's Mr. Bachman's properties right there on the table, and it is covered in blood and it is really gruesome. And it is the most reality stricken moment that I'd ever had in my life, something that was so real and so serious. And Hugh had there's no words to describe what is happening. So we just hug each other and we're crying. And I remember I looked at him and Tom said, hey, what do we do? What do you need from us? And he looked at us both and said, your job is to get the team focused. I'll be back when I can. He goes, we put too much work into this right now for anything to hold us back. And that means anything. I can remember him telling us that, right? And so we get in the taxi and me and Tom, we don't say a word for the 45-minute drive back to the Olympic Village. And we get in, we have a team meeting, and we relayed exactly what he said. And so Hugh comes on the next morning, talks us through the situation. And of course, we all have heavy hearts, and we go to play Venezuela and we barely squeak by. And, something happened during that match where every one of us felt something bigger than ourselves touching us. And we get in the locker room after that. And I can remember Lloyd just looking up and goes, we're going to win this whole effing thing. And as soon as he said that, all of us kind of poked our heads up. And he's like, Hugh wants us to do that. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to talk about it. And that was the last that we discussed anything that was going on outside of that room. And so, it really got us centered. Again, it's just it was something that only brothers would do for each other, and we got really focused. And then obviously we played the best volleyball of maybe any USA volleyball team has ever played in that next 9 matches. We went on to beat the number 1, 2, 3 team in the world, in crazy epic fashions that were unbelievable matches. God was helping us that entire time. And we got Hugh back a little bit later, and no way that he could be 100% focused on what was going on. It would be impossible. But we played as hard as we could for him and his family. And, it was extra motivation. And I don't mean that in a calloused way at all. I think it's just simply the fact that when a group of athletes such as ourselves, elite, have a little bit more motivation, it'll push you to the next level. And we were able to achieve that and play and hold on to it for an entire month, which is really difficult to do. And so when that was over, I can remember hugging Hugh right after the match, and I could feel a huge relief, first of all. And then secondly, he knew what was coming right in front of him. But it was an incredible moment that we all got to share. And, I talk to Hugh probably every 2 weeks. And obviously I check in on Wiz when I'm texting with him. And he's been instrumental in everything in my life that has gone on, publicly, non-publicly. And, there's not many things that I can say that will do justice for the amount of service that he has provided USA Volleyball. But just for my own career, he was one of the biggest pieces of success in my volleyball playing. He gave me the confidence and my ability to tell me that I could play with anybody, and he would walk up to me and say, do not forget who you are. Do not forget where you came from, and when a coach tells you that and gives you that confidence, you'll go out and play a little bit more free. It's the same thing that I told Reed, and he was able to, relieve himself of the burden of himself. Right. It's just, you get that affirmation from somebody you really respect. And, it was obviously very instrumental in our 2008 success.
Well, Riley, appreciate you sharing the story and sharing your perspective of it. And the support system theme of this podcast is coming through again here, and of what you all did for Hugh and his family, and then for each other, and for yourselves too, and to get to the top of the podium for that program. And yeah, I guess, I mean, touched on it a lot there, but just, go diving back into that moment and into your memory. What was that like, just standing on top of the podium and hearing the national anthem and getting that medal around your neck too?
Yeah, the word surreal is used a lot, right? It was an unbelievable achievement. As soon as Clay hit the last ball and I saw it go into the stands, it was as if something had kind of took over my body, and I just felt this huge sense of warmth just covering my entire body. Like, oh my God, I can't believe we just did this. And again, it was we, right? It's always we. And if anybody's listening to this and wants to be a great volleyball player, it's not about you, it's about we. And whenever you put the we in front of me, great things transpire. But as soon as that ball hit the ground, I felt that feeling. And then Tom Hoff comes up and we embrace. We get up to the podium and he says, "Hey, your life's about to change. Our lives are about to change." And all I could remember as they're putting the gold medal on was just thinking of how hard we had all worked to get to where we were. The countless hours of training, the arguments, the fights and training that we've had with each other, the losses that we endured, the great wins that we had. And up until that point, we had really never beat Russia. That group of players had not beat Russia. And so we had beat Brazil a week earlier, 2 weeks earlier in the World League finals. And we had beat Serbia as well in the World League final. And so, but before that, we had not had much success at all against those teams. So to beat those teams in that order was unbelievably special. And it solidified that we were the best team in the world. There was no doubt because we beat everybody. But when the medal goes on, something happens that you feel I felt extremely proud to be an American. I played at that point, I think I had played in about 14 different countries, Russia being one of them and Brazil being another one of them. And there's no place in the world like the United States. And to get to represent that and to win for the United States was something that I'll never forget. And I hope that every Olympian that ever has the opportunity really understands the magnitude of what we're doing out there, because it is way bigger than me and it's bigger than my team. And when I think about it now, I get teary-eyed because it's way more special today than it was then. Then I was just going through the motion and what's next. Now I look back on it and realize how much work went into it.
Riley, appreciate all the time and love this conversation, just diving into your career. And we are a little bit over time. Wanted to check in on you. Are you still good? I would love to get to one more topic before we kind of say goodbye here.
I'm good. I have nothing going on until 3:00 this afternoon.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again. Just, reflecting on your career, taking us through your journey and on all the memorable moments. And I guess before we switch gears here, I want to kind of get into what you're doing now. But before we switch gears here, anything we kind of left on the table as far as your career, your playing career goes?
Oh, I think we covered about everything. No, I think I can't think of anything right now.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, let's check in on what's going on now. I know you're coaching. You mentioned you were coaching. What's, I guess before we get into what exactly you're doing now, coaching, what drew you into wanting to be a coach in volleyball?
I think towards the end of my career, my body was failing me, and just having conversations with national team coaches and college coaches kind of told me that I would be good at coaching. I can motivate young people, and I have a really good eye for volleyball and have good volleyball IQ. But as I've learned, being a good player does not mean that you're going to be a good coach, and it takes a lot more to get into that. So I just wanted to explore that option to see if I could lead young people to get them to experience the joy in volleyball that I experienced. So that's kind of what drew me to it. And right when I retired, I still have this company, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. Is I just do a lot of volleyball consulting. Essentially what that means is private lessons, going around the country doing camps. But right now it's more geared towards kids that are playing in college or want to play in college. It's more of an elite level service that I'm geared toward. But I'm currently looking at universities across the United States to try to get into the women's game. So that's what's on my plate as of right now. Made that decision about a month ago. I coached at J. Sarah High School the last 2 seasons, the boys and the girls, assistant on the girls, of the boys and realize that I'm getting older and I haven't coached in Division I women's volleyball, and I want to do that. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I've emailed a bunch of schools. I've had a couple of interviews. I'm actually really excited again to get into that. I haven't been super excited about coaching at the highest level for a while. So I think something new kind of sparked, it gives you a spark to get going again.
Yeah, that's amazing. Best of luck to you as you pursue that journey and that opportunity. Yeah, very excited to maybe hopefully have you back on the podcast after you land one of those jobs, and we can catch up even more. But I get yeah. You touched on it a little bit there, but kind of wanting to help young people find that love and that joy for the game. But yeah, what are some of the more rewarding parts of coaching for you?
The biggest reward for me is when I see a player. I guess what we've been working on for a couple of weeks, right? They finally see and feel the skill that I'm talking about, and they use it in a match like scenario, right? And you see their eyes light up like, oh, that's it, and you can always tell when that happens because they'll kind of give me they'll smile, look over, whatever it is. And that's what I really loved when I was a player, and my coaches would teach me something next level or elite, that not all players can do. And so when I see high school kids and even college kids making that next jump to what I would call trying to be an elite volleyball player, I love when the lights come on in their eyes and you can see them grasping the concepts that I'm teaching them, and wanting to put the extra work in. I think because it's a lot of players nowadays don't put a lot of extra work in, and I don't know exactly why that is. It's just what I've noticed over the past couple of seasons coaching in high school. Maybe it's because they have a lot of other things going on, or load management now is an issue that they hear in the professional ranks. But I really get excited when I see young players wanting to come in early, get extra reps, and staying late, or just putting a little bit more effort in than their teammates are.
Yeah, I had a brief stint in coaching. I coached a 14U boys team, also a 16 as well, but that 14U was fun. I found out coaching's not for me. I didn't enjoy it much, and
moved on from that. But I loved that team so much, and I loved seeing how much they loved it too, especially from the boys side, where you don't when they got to play against other boys teams, and actually even before that, when we were having the tryouts, and they had never been around so many boys that had played volleyball. And so seeing that was cool. And then a very similar moment to what you mentioned there, we were kind of working on, when the ball's not perfect up at the net, and you got to use your non-dominant hand maybe to get it over. And one of my players had an amazing spike with his left hand, his non-dominant hand. And you could tell it was just like kind of going through the motions a little bit. His body was acting before his brain, maybe, or the other way around. But he came down and just looked at me and just this big smile. And that was just such a fun moment that I don't coach anymore, but I hold on to that one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those are really special. And I've worked with a lot of players that were playing at the Final Four this last weekend in UCLA. So they'll text me after matches. And they're like, hey, did you see that? And that's, to me, that's what it's about, right? It's that's like cool. They're still thinking of things that I taught them 2-3 years ago, and that's what it's about, man, is sharing the gift that was given to me from my coaches. And it's not, I'm not inventing anything new in volleyball. I'm simply passing on what I've learned. However, there are certain things at the highest level that, not every athlete you coach is going to learn, right? So it's really neat when like you just said, you pass on a specific skill that might come in play once every 3 or 4 tournaments, and it happens to work out, and they get that really cool look on their face. They're like, holy cow, that's what I love about coaching. And even more than that is I love the relationships that I get to make with players. Because at the end of the day, we're mentors, that's really what we're doing. And I think a lot of times in the collegiate landscape, it becomes a lot more transactional. The coaching is transactional. What are you going to do for me? And I hope I don't get to that place. I really hope that I can stay involved in my players' lives, and they can come to me when they need something, and help them off the court, as I've had tons of experience on and off the court that help players when they get in a little bit of adversity. but the player relationships are probably the most important thing to me. And then when they do those elite skills that we talk about that happens once every blue moon, that's really fun as well when the light comes on.
Well, I mean, we talked about it earlier. You had your high school coach that played a huge impact in your career, and Doug Beal, of course, as well. And really cool to see you continuing in volleyball and coaching and taking what you learned from those coaches and being a player as well at the highest level and passing it on to the next generation, the youth here. But yeah, I can say, Jay, just for myself here and for all of USA Volleyball, I think very, very excited, very thankful that you're still involved in the game of volleyball and passing on your knowledge and experience. So thank you so much for all you've done for volleyball, the sport, and USA Volleyball, and continue to do for the sport as well.
You're welcome. And I want to thank USA Volleyball really from the bottom of my heart. They gave me a chance when nobody else would. And I will forever be grateful for that. And I always will give back to them. And I think that they know that, but I'm only a phone call away from anything that they ever want. So I never forget where I came from.
Perfect. Well, Riley, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm excited to catch up with you again in person and meet in person in Orlando at the Hall of Fame. Congratulations again, and enjoy the celebrations with your family and friends and former teammates there too.
Thank you, Stephen. You have a great day, and tell everybody at USA Volleyball I said hi, please.
I will. Thank you so much, Riley.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you next week.
Yes, sir.
All right.
What a fun conversation with Riley, and really such an insightful conversation with Riley, just talking about his whole journey through volleyball, going back to when he first discovered the game, and a moment that I can kind of connect with too, just kind of that first moment where volleyball, the sport, gets its hooks in you, and yeah, just kind of sitting on the sideline waiting for or trying to practice a basketball, and the volleyball team really encouraging him to step in for a few minutes while they were waiting for someone else, and just getting that first set and that first spike over to him, and that was the moment he was hooked, and he never stopped playing ever since. So yeah, a moment that I can for sure connect with, and I know a lot of listeners can connect with that as well. So hopefully listeners, you enjoyed that conversation, and big thank you to Riley for just giving us the time and the energy and just sharing so many great stories with us, and of course special shout out to four-time Olympian Reed Pretty for kind of crashing the call there, and yeah, congratulating Riley, and it was cool to hear the two of them kind of go back and forth and share some stories, and just the appreciation they had for each other and their other teammates who were part of their journeys too. But Riley, looking forward to celebrating with you and the rest of the USA Volleyball Hall of Fame class of 2026 in Orlando, just about a week. Yeah, just a little over a week here. But yeah, for the listeners and the fans, stay tuned for some fun content that we're going to have at the Hall of Fame ceremony and banquet. But listeners, as always, thank you so much for your support. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you missed our last two episodes, like I mentioned earlier, we had a little series, episodic series here of Hall of Fame, talking about Hall of Fame and featuring some of the class of 2026. We had Nicole Millage-Faust from our U.S. Women's Sitting National Team, and Feluca Akinradawo from our U.S. Women's National Team. A ton of medals between the two of those. Really great conversations too. And just fantastic athletes and fantastic people too. So if you like today's episode, you will for sure like those episodes. And if you haven't listened to them, go ahead and check those out on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, you can catch video episodes on our USA Volleyball YouTube channel as well. If you have feedback or ideas for future guests and topics, reach out to us at the USAV show at usav.org. Follow and leave a comment on your go-to podcast platforms. And yeah, of course, thank you so much again for all the support. It really helps us grow and reach new listeners when you engage in our episodes and share them with your friends and family and teammates and everyone. So thank you so much. But that's it for this week's episode. Until next time, you're listening to the USA Volleyball Show, the official podcast of USA Volleyball.
This has been the USA Volleyball Show with Stephen Munson. Produced by Curtis Ward. Our content producer is Laura Fawcett. Our marketing lead is Bree Jaycox. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share with your friends. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the USA Volleyball Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts.